we are back. We are starting back the Making Disciples podcast. It has been around 3 years since we have been doing this podcast. And man, I am so excited to be back. And Robbie and I got to start the first conversation last week. This week, I get to bring in one of my good friends, Mr. Jeremy Smith. And so in just a second, I'll let Jeremy introduce himself. But just a reminder, as we start back the Making Disciples podcast, here's kind of been the last few years for us. Robbie started this podcast in 2018 and started to share for about 3-4 years everything that he knew, that Chris Swain knew around disciple making. And then about 3 years ago, we took a pause. And man, God has been up to some amazing things ever since. And so in between those kind of hiatuses of the podcast, Long Hollow, we've seen a revival happen. And so seeing thousands get saved, just unbelievable stories. I got to join staff in 2020 at Replicate. And then we have moved from Toolkit 1.0 to 2.0. So 1.0 was the first few years that we did. That's what Robbie would talk about on the podcast. Now we have seen over the last 5 years, Toolkit 2.0 emerge, and it's really building upon what we've learned. And so super excited for what we're seeing in churches with it, and really excited to bring those conversations every week to you on the podcast. And so to help us do that, what I love is we're not just having Robbie or me do it. We are bringing in our network pastors who are living this out, and people who are seeing tremendous success all across the country. One of those people, and who you'll hear more and more from every week, is my good friend, Jeremy Smith. And so Jeremy and I met a few years ago. And so Jeremy, share just a little bit where you are, how we met, and then your passion for disciple making.
Yeah. Thank you, Vic. Appreciate it. Super excited about what God is doing and some new things that are rolling. I'm the lead pastor of a church called Crosspoint down here in Northwest Florida. I say down here. I don't know where you are, wherever you're listening to this. Hopefully
You're not
all
much
over.
below Florida.
So come visit us sometime in the Panhandle of Florida, Northwest Florida. We have 6 campuses ranging from Pensacola all the way over to near Panama City Beach. So we're suffering for Jesus down here at the beach, having a good time.
You say that as I have ice out my front door, so I don't appreciate that one bit.
I think we might be one of Vic's favorite stops.
True.
So anyway, so we're down here in Northwest Florida, and back in 2022, we got connected with Replicate really out of desperation. One of our pastors reached out about some huddles, and then we got connected to Vick, and man, we were off and running after that. We'll talk a whole lot more about that as we go through the next few episodes and what God has done with us. Excited to be a part of this network, and just excited about disciple making. That's the conviction that I have. God really transformed my heart around disciple making, and this ministry and what we're a part of doing has set us on fire and set our church on fire. So,
and I would add to just to brag on you and your church. Like Jeremy truly has such a passion for disciple making. Their church at Crosspoint is doing things like they really, of all the churches that we're serving, they're one of those that I'm always like, man, they are doing it right. They're kind of setting the pace for many churches. Like I'm regularly learning from he and Jagger. And so just seeing what God's doing, not just in his church, but they're having an incredible movement in the Global Methodist as well. And so they are helping hundreds of churches in the Global Methodist get back to John Wesley's disciple making ways.
Right.
And so it's just really exciting to have you on here too, because I think the value that Jeremy brings is all these principles, he and his church, they're living it, and he brings such a great just perspective of, man, this is what it practically looks like in the church. This is where we're still trying to figure it out, and this is where we've seen success. So super excited to have you on with us, man. And it's just always fun to hang together.
Yeah, that's right. That's good to hear, Vic. I appreciate that, brother, because we always feel behind. So
I think every leader feels that. It's very true.
yeah, but that's one of the things I love about the Replicate Network is it's not just one denomination or one stream. It's
That's right.
a bunch. God has just got us into a bunch of different denominations, a bunch of
That's right.
different ways of living this whole Christian faith out and doing disciple making.
That's right. I
So,
love it.
well, Vic, we want to get started, man. Jump into what we're talking about today because it's exciting. There's a lot of things to talk about. There's been a lot of lessons learned through Replicate the last 17 years of helping churches make disciples who make disciples and create disciple making movements. So what I'd love for you to talk about today is just the biggest lessons that you guys have learned. 4 biggest lessons. You'll probably have them alliterated or something like that. I know there'll be some really clever way of talking about it, but the biggest lessons that you guys have learned, you and Robbie, over the past 17 years. To get us started in that, though, can you just give us an overview of what the past 17 years have been, especially since, there's been a little break with this podcast. We're getting back in with Toolkit 2.0. Give us a little overview.
Yeah, 17 years ago, Robbie and Candy started Replicate Ministries, and it was all about equipping the church around disciple making. What's funny is like what we did, just as all visions kind of start out. Like I think the way it started looks nothing like how it was at the end. Also, Robbie looks totally different. If you look and watch all of Replicates, year over year, I love watching Robbie's hair, his goatee, everything. He doesn't wear near his he didn't wear a jacket anymore. He's a lot more casual, and so
Still big though, still enormous.
still same framework. And so, but yeah, it was started. It actually at one point was a radio ministry, and so
Let's bring that back.
yeah, right. Here we are. It's kind of like what we're doing.
That's right. That's
And so, but it was started 2008. And so it was all around helping the church around discipleship and multiplication. And it's still that today. And so for the first, from really 2008 to 2015, it did a lot of resources. A lot of churches know us as the D group people, that discipleship group of 3 to 5, growing in spiritual disciplines of reading the word, sharing your faith, confession and repentance. That's how a lot of people know us. That was really kind of the early beginning. So like I jokingly say, before discipleship was cool, like Replicate was talking about it. And like before churches were thinking about multiplication, like we were really building, like, what does it look like for ministry to happen outside the walls of the church, not just within it. And so that was really to 2015. Then from 2015 to 2020, Robbie and them began to do more trainings. And that's where I actually connected with Replicate, got to know them in 2018. They trained us. And then, they're seeing success in Replicate in a lot of churches. But there's a lot of churches, too, that the toolkit wasn't working. And that was especially hard on me and Robbie as I joined Replicate at the time. The reason being, one of the churches it wasn't working at was ours. At Long Hollow, like the toolkit's not working. And that's really, as the podcast, we kind of hit a pause and like we hit this reset moment of like, hey, we've got to figure some things out. I think that's what I love is like we are from the church and for the church. And like we're living what we're helping other churches with. And as all pastors know, like what worked in year 1 doesn't always work in year 3. And that's what we found out. And so that's really kind of the hiatus in the podcast became this place of like, let's figure out like, why isn't it working? And that's when we picked it back over the last few years, started implementing Toolkit 2.0. Pretty wild. Over the 17 years, we've equipped 4,000 churches around disciple making. Over the last 2 years, we have seen nearly half of that. Our last, I would say 3 years. God has there's been an exponential opportunities that we've had and we are seeing unbelievable results. And so that's kind of today, like before we even jump into like, what is Toolkit 2.0? Like, what are those things? I think the last 5 years, Robbie and I both would say one of the most formative years for us. It was a really getting us ready for the movement that God's doing through Replicate. And so that's where we learned some big lessons that we thought we knew, but we were like, wow, we realized what we thought we knew we needed to change. So that's kind of where these lessons come into play.
Speaking of movement, I mean, there's also there's Toolkit 2.0, and then there's the book coming out very, very soon.
Yeah.
So talk about that, Movement Ready Church, just real briefly before we jump in.
Yeah, it'll be launching. I think when this episode airs, it'll actually be a week away. So so it is coming or maybe it's a couple weeks. I can't remember, but you can pre-order it now. It is Toolkit 2.0 in a book. And so we're going to be talking a lot of the content in it through these episodes. But man, if you want just like a one place that it's all at, Movement Ready Church, like it's Toolkit 2.0 in a book. We're super excited for it.
Yeah, can't wait. I can't wait. I've been through the toolkit. I know a lot of this stuff, and I can't wait for it just to get it in people's hands.
That's right.
Replicate the book was so transformative for me.
Yeah.
And really turned me on to a lot of things that Replicate does. And so I know this book is going to be even more. Can't wait. So let's jump in. What are the 4 biggest lessons over the past 17 years?
Yeah, I think so. Lesson 1 is that I think multiplication is counterintuitive. And what's wild is like, so you just think there's a statistic, I've seen it all around the way, like 60% of pastors have never been discipled. And so that's just, it's amazing. Like we'll ask in our room when we're with people who are like in the disciple making tribe, and they're like, and it holds up. And this idea is that you can't give something you haven't received. Like you're pulling from experience. And so that's true in just relational discipleship for your congregation members, for you, but also when it just comes to leading a church, you're pulling from your past experience. Well, the problem with that is the past experience, the local church, for the most part, has been over-programmed and under-discipled. They've been really active and they're in the church and they're doing all these things, but like they're not really seeing discipleship and multiplication outside the church. They'll see ministry whenever the staff owns it and it happens at their church building, but they're not seeing disciples made where they live, work, and play. And so one of the biggest things that we realized is, we talk about it, there's almost like 2 operating systems for church leaders. And when you think about the church, there's an engagement and an empowerment. And so the engagement is where we as leaders, we're trying to engage people into what we'd say is the family of God. Get them to worship, get them in small group, get them in volunteer team. Let's get them a part of the family. And then there's the other side where we're trying to empower them on mission. And so go and make disciples, go and share your faith, go and disciple others. And what this is, the thing about it is, what is good for engagement is usually bad for empowerment. What's good for empowerment is usually bad for engagement. And so like engagement says, let's get everybody in. Empowerment says, let's get them out. Engagement says, let's make it easy to follow Jesus. Empowerment says like, hey, go, let's make it challenging. Like engagement says like, let's lower the bar to eliminate any barriers. Empowerment says, hey, you need to be a leader. You need to get out there. And what this is there are 2 things that you have to have. Acts 2 had both. But the problem is most churches leaders only know how to lead engagement ministries. How do I bring people in? How do I attract them? How do I run programs that connect people? And so when you try to encourage them to move to multiplication, the things that made them successful in the past, the things that they're familiar with in the past, actually hurt them with where they're trying to go in the future.
Yeah.
And so people, amen, multiplication, empowerment, disciple making. The problem is you don't even know it, but like your operating system, the only way you know to lead actually is hindering you. And so no matter how much content you have and intellectually you know about making disciples and disciple making, you're the leadership development lags. They don't know how to lead in a way that actually sees multiplication thrive without hurting the gathered expressions, the connecting spaces. And so I think that was the biggest lesson for us, was like, if we just give content away and read books, that's great. Aha moments happen, but leaders struggle to actually execute those because their previous experiences are actually hindrance to their future vision.
Yeah, that's so good. Man, I've heard this probably 50 times and it like resonates with my heart every time I hear it, and I get convicted at the exact same time still.
Yeah.
But so when you say, what a heartbreak, man, my heart just breaks. 60% of pastors have never been discipled. But here's what I think of. They have been discipled, but just not in disciple making.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
They've
that's
been
true.
discipled in programming and how to run a church in that way. That's part of my story as well. I got super good at that, I feel
That's
like.
right.
So we have been discipled, but then when you read the Bible, you're like, there's a disconnect here. And I think that's the tension we all feel.
I know. And I mean, you can see in the room, I did it the other day in Alabama and I walk them through our Kingdom Circle tool, which is all about helping people live on mission where they're in their circles of influence. And like the pastor he interrupts. It's an XP, been doing ministry for years. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to need you." And I gave a 30-minute presentation. He says, "I'm going to need you to slow this down. I need you to walk me step by step." He was like, "I can't even imagine doing ministry outside of our church's programming." And he was like, "I know you're right. I just don't even know where to start," which I love. At least we acknowledge it. But I think what you're saying is he's been discipled, or what he thinks ministry must look like is more programming, is the church to own it, that ministry's happening in the building. And it's just it's counterintuitive to say, actually, what if it's somewhere else?
Well, that's what I love about Replicate is a lot of discipleship conversations that I've heard over the years are like, what if, and let's design, and
Yeah.
let's think, and we should be. But this is like, all right, yeah, all that. But here's how,
That's
in a
right.
unique way for your church, in the unique way God created you. Let's get down to like the convictions there. Now let's get to the how. And Toolkit 2.0 does both, changes paradigms, and gets to the how. That's what I love about it.
Hey, church leader, I want to take just a moment and tell you about an exciting opportunity for you. Most churches have a passion for multiplication. They just don't know how to do it. Pastors have this disciple-making burden, but their vision and strategy for it just aren't working. After 17 years and working with over 4,000 churches, our team has found many ways to help the church better make disciples. We call this our Movement Ready Church process. It helps your church create a disciple-making culture, vision, and strategy that fits your unique context. It fits your church size, your community, your leadership style. If you want more information about our Movement Ready Church process, you can grab the book, Movement Ready Church, at any place that books are sold. Also, you can join us for any of our Movement Ready trainings. We host one-day trainings all across the country, and we have a virtual on-demand course that you can go through as a team. So if you're ready to see multiplication take off at your church, just go ahead and grab the leader notes in this show, and you'll see all the links to what I've mentioned and more. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, it's funny. That's been the balance too, is you need both. That's where I would say probably like our second lesson that we learned is we only did one of those.
Okay.
We only Robbie comes in 2015 to Long Hollow, and he has the disciple making playbook. Toolkit 1.0, we were specializing in strategy and tactics. And I think that's what's great is most places, it's like, I love multiplication, but like, how do you do it? And so we're
Mm,
like, great, we'll tell you how to do it. What we vastly underestimated was just because you say you want multiplication doesn't mean you actually have a multiplication culture. And that was our big lesson that multiplication strategy without multiplication culture won't last.
mm,
And so Robbie came into Long Hollow and he gave, "Hey, here's our discipleship pathway. Here are D groups. Here's the strategy. Here's the playbook. It's worked at my previous 2 churches." And I mean, you've heard me say, like, we came in talking about all about discipleship pathway, 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 pathway. Man, that thing became a curse word in our staff. Like, eventually the whole staff was like, "Oh, not again." And what it was though is that what we were doing is we were trying to lead people with strategy, not vision.
mm,
We were leading with, "Hey, here's a new method, here's a new program," but we weren't really at the culture level. And so it's like, I mean, I think it's directly this is like culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it's like, I mean, I have known that phrase since, like, I don't know, like, since I became a leader. Like, I don't like, I mean, it's just leadership 101. And so the big, like, lesson for us is like, wait, we've been doing this for, 12 years. And it's like, hey, guys, maybe culture matters. It's like so humbling. And what you realize is like people want strategy, but at the end of the day, strategy is not gonna move the needle if the culture isn't there. If there's not a disciple-making culture, and if there's not disciple-making vision, the strategy is you have a shelf life. We talk about it, it's like you can go for probably 3, 4 years, and then eventually people are gonna say, "Alright, I'm out."
mm.
And that was one of the biggest lessons we learned. I think we assumed that they knew the why, so we gave them the how. But the truth of the matter is, like, our people didn't know the why. They didn't know why disciple making mattered. And they didn't all see disciple making the same way. And so the methods that we were given, eventually they just burnt out on it. And they said, "Oh, okay, like, it's just another program. I'm done with that."
Yeah, or you went through all the people that did get it already,
Yes.
and then you were like, "Oh, now we're on the people that I guess didn't."
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right.
yeah, that's super good. But even we need strategy for building culture.
Yeah.
That's something that everybody would talk about. You gotta create a culture, but again,
Mhm.
how do you even do that?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
busy trying to preach a sermon on Sunday and do all the other stuff I'm trying to do. Culture,
I know.
Can you help me do that too?
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's that word, like, that's the thing too, is, like, I think we want the quick fix.
Mhm.
Everybody does, and we're in a culture of, like, instant gratification, and so, like, I think one of the biggest temptations is to say, "Hey, where's that silver bullet out there?
Right.
Where's the strategy I can just copy and paste?" And I think that was one of the big things we learned too is, like, we felt that in Toolkit 1.0, like Pastor saying, we need a program, we need a strategy." And so we would just take, like, what was working for us, and we would kinda give these prescriptive practices.
Mm,
And we'd say, "Here you go." And what would happen is people would take it and they would input it into the culture, and it's like, if your culture is not disciple making and you put a disciple making strategy into it, it's like trying to upload an Android app to an Apple, iOS. Like, it rejects it. It's like, and it doesn't like your culture is that iOS. And so, like, you can't put in a new app until that iOS system, that, like, culture actually understands it. And so, like, one of the
gosh.
biggest things that I've had to pump the brakes for pastors, like, "Give us D groups, give us a strategy." And I'm like, "Hey, I would love to come help you. I think that will help some. I do think you're gonna be underwhelmed by the overall results. I think it's not gonna deliver what you want because you have bigger issues than just, 'We need a disciple-making ministry.' No, we need a disciple-making culture, and that takes time, it takes hard work, and it takes a much bigger investment." And so I think that's one of the biggest lessons that we learned, I would say, over the last few years.
And it's slow.
It is.
Gosh.
It
You
is.
told us that from the beginning, and I'm like, "Nah, nah, we got it. We can do it quicker." And it's just like, still.
Yeah,
working. But that's that 10, 15, 20-year view rather than generational view rather
that's
than
right.
2 to 5 years. Hey, just say that one more time about the iOS and
Yeah,
if you don't have the culture, the systems aren't going to
yeah.
work. So just say, I think that's worth repeating.
Oh, man, I'm gonna try. I don't know if I can say it again, but I'll try. It's like essentially, if you try to bring a multiplication app into to your iOS system that doesn't have disciple making DNA, that isn't multiplication oriented, it's gonna reject it. Like,
Mm,
and so we were just trying to give people new apps of disciple making, and the church culture wouldn't compute. And so it would work for a little bit, and then, I mean, to keep with the illustration, it'd bug out.
yeah.
Like, it would eventually just it would kinda fall apart. And so I think that
Mm.
idea of culture as the iOS of your church, like, it's what actually allows you to bring in disciple making strategies, and they're successful.
Super good. And that's why I love starting with motivation. We're
Yeah,
not just starting with where we're going or what we want to do, but the motivation behind it
that's
all.
right.
All right. What's the third lesson?
Third lesson, it feels almost counterintuitive in this, or it feels like I'm going back, like flip-flopping here, but we realize is multiplication vision without a multiplication strategy won't move.
Mm.
And so it really is both and that's what you said earlier, but this is kind of the flip side of it is like, I think there's so many people have a multiplication vision. They're like, we want to make disciples and like we want to see people live sent, like how many churches do you know that say live sent, make disciples? And it's like it's so like you hear every week from stage. But what was so interesting is like, man, I love your heart. Like I'd meet pastor like, man, like I am so on board. Like I love your vision. You see what we're trying to accomplish. So how are you doing that? And they're like, man, I don't know. Now, actually, let me take that back. The lead pastor would tell me something. Then I would go to the other staff and they were like, we don't have anything. Nobody knows how we're doing. And I say that jokingly, and I say it in love because like I like there's often a gap when it comes to organizational clarity. We talk a lot about that. And so, like, one of my friends says it this way. He says, getting vision is easy. Getting shared vision is hard.
Ooh, that's another good one.
It
Say,
it's so good, and so I think what happens at churches is a visionary has a multiplication heartbeat. They're like, "Go make disciples, live sent," and for them in their seat with the responsibilities that they have the level of clarity and vision that they need to do their job. But the people who are actually running programmings and systems, your executive pastor, your discipleship pastor, the congregation, they don't have the clarity that they need. They're like, I agree, but what does that mean for me? What does that mean for this week? And churches, they have this multiplication vision, but they don't actually, it doesn't connect to their strategy, doesn't connect to everyday programming. And so the question is like, how do we get that vision to be shared vision? Where it's not, that's the lead pastor's vision, that's our staff's vision, that's our people's vision. How do we get our kids director, our student director, our discipleship director, or if you're in a bivocational or church of 250, like how do you get your key committees or lay leaders on board where they say that's our vision? And I know what that means for me this week. I know what that means for me this semester, this year. That's that piece of getting a strategy and getting enough clarity that it moves beyond the visionary to the whole team. Like that part is just missing for so many churches. They've got a great vision, but they don't know how. And they don't know how to get it beyond just the lead pastor's vision to the church's vision. And so it's become so much of what we're doing. Uh, One other thing I would add to that, just in line with that, is most churches have a multiplication vision, but they don't have a multiplication vehicle.
mm,
They talk about multiplication, but they if you actually ask, do you have a program that helps develop and multiply disciples? No. No, we don't, and I think that gap there too, we'll talk about that more in the days ahead, but that gap has been massive. Very few churches that I've met with actually have a multiplication vehicle, something that is designed to develop and multiply disciple makers. And if we can't be upset that our vision isn't happening when our strategy, we don't have a strategy for it. I think it's Robbie says it, your church is perfectly designed to get the results it's getting.
Right. Ooh,
And most of
that'll
the
hit you.
time, that's right. Most of the time our programming and our staff, they're not designed for the vision of multiplication.
I know lesson 3 and lesson 2, like you said, they almost sound a little like opposites of each other, kind of two sides of the same
Yeah.
coin, but they both have to do with culture, like
For sure.
you're talking about,
Yeah.
and that expectation gap between kind of what the senior leader expects and what everybody else experiences, and that's where the frustration gets in, and
Mhm.
resentment and misalignment, all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. So that's still culture.
That's right.
But that whole like your church is perfectly designed to get the disciples that you're getting right now,
Yeah.
that'll get you. Getting the people on board. I love that you include like, hey, we can talk about the mega church level or 500, 1,000, whatever, but 250, 100, 75,
Yeah.
whatever. That's most churches in America.
It is.
And so getting the people on board, that's why I love our Movement Ready days.
Yeah.
It's such an easy way to get your people to start hearing this and change those paradigms. And
Sure.
I know we'll talk more about that as we go, but,
Yeah.
um, all right, lesson 4.
Final lesson, I'd say final. There's probably a lot more, just trying to find a way to do this in a time frame that isn't just like, a 3-hour call.
Yeah.
And so, but I think lesson 4 for us, and you actually hinted at this, Jeremy, multiplication requires more than you think and takes
Mhm,
longer than you think.
mhm.
And I mean, you said it like that, like I warned you, and you're like, no, not us. Like, and that's every pastor. They look and they think like, okay, like, yeah, I mean, it'll probably take a few months, and it's like, no, buddy, we're talking years, not months. And I think that's the piece there is like with multiplication, with disciple making, it's not a quick fix. It's not a new program that we're launching. Like this is a new culture. This is a new
Yeah,
lifestyle. Like what we're doing when you're talking about multiplication, the goal is not just how active are people in our programming. It's man, what transformation are we seeing in our people? And that takes so much longer. So a couple of things like pastors are always talking about like, man, I have a passion for disciple making. Great. So glad you do. Most pastors say that. My question is not do you have the passion for disciple making? Do you have the grit for it?
mm,
Can you withstand the change that like the leadership tax, the cost of being able to change your culture? Like, can you lead your church through that? Do you believe in it enough, even when people step away, even when there's setbacks, even when the results lag? And so I think the question isn't do you have the passion for it, is do you have the grit for it? We were doing just last week, we were doing with Robbie, and we were doing we were talking through Long Hollow's story. And what was sweet about it was we were talking about revival. We're talking about thousands of people getting saved, disciple making happening out in the community. And it was Robbie, myself, and Julie. Well, before we talked about that, we talked about the 5 years where man, like Robbie thought about giving up. I thought about giving up. Like we talked about all the lows. And it just was a sweet moment because I think you saw a 10-year arc of a movement. And year 10 was sweet. Man, it's so good right now. But year 2 and 3, it sucked. Like there's no other way around it. It was tough, man. And I think it's just that idea that every season of movement is preceded by a season of readiness.
mm,
There's a season of preparation in the hearts of the leader. There's a shifting of culture. There's like what people don't share with you is that when you get clear on vision, good people leave because you articulate what are the priorities and what are we doing. And all of this happens in those first few seasons as you change the culture. And, my friend Dave Rhodes says the social contract with your people. Hey, I do this, you do this. when you change that contract, some people don't opt in for it.
Mhm.
And I think the big idea here is everybody wants the impact of multiplication, but they're not okay with the pace of multiplication. And there's so many churches that never get to see the fruit of multiplication at year 10 because they gave up at year 2. And I think that one of the best ways that I think we prepare teams when we work with them is sobering their expectations of what does growth look like? What does multiplication look like? And trying to not, I don't want to give you a false picture of the future. I want to prepare you for the difficult road of disciple making. The
Mm.
question isn't, is it easy? The question is it right? Is it worth it? And I think that's one of the biggest things is that like preparing people that multiplication is going to take longer than you think. It's going to require more than you think. You share, I mean, as we kind of wrap up, I'd love, what would you add to that? Because you're living it.
Well, you're preaching now. We need to give an altar call or something at this moment of the podcast because we've shifted in the preaching, everybody.
There it is. I love the Methodists doing altar calls. Our Baptist friends would love that.
I'm down at the altar right now. I'm repenting and doing all the stuff. Yeah. I think, part of what we talk about with passion is what are you willing to suffer? That's the root of that.
That's right.
In Latin or whatever is suffering. That's why it's the passion of the Christ. What are you willing to go through to get to where God wants you to go? And what I always think about and go back to, really, sometimes the only thing that gives me hope in this journey, like legitimately, is Hebrews 11, thinking about the hall of faith and what faith is, and how halfway through and then at the end, it's like none of these great men and women of faith received the promise, the fullness of the promise. I'm like, dang, but I got to thinking about it. What makes a great man or woman of faith? It's not like everything went great.
That's right.
It all worked out. You have faith when you don't see it and you still believe.
That's
and
right.
You still spend your life on it. That's a great man or woman of faith. And so, the other thing I think about is I want generational change. I want to be a part of an awakening in the next generation and see that and right now try to create the kind of church that would engage them in being the church that Jesus has created us to be. And so that is everything. And when you take that long-term view, it's like John 12, planting a seed in the ground and dying. And Lord, it's okay if I don't see the fullness of the fruit. I mean, it's not okay. I don't like it.
Yeah.
but is it mine or is it his?
Yeah.
Is it for me or is it for others?
It's good.
And that's a die into yourself that I'm still in the process of doing. And I wish we were further than we are. But it is worth it. Just driving in today, I was thinking about, I heard another story of someone who's making disciples. And I was like, all right, it's worth it.
That's right. That's right. Well, and for those that are like, well, that was a Debbie Downer lesson. What I would encourage you is Jeremy sharing the struggle that you feel as a church leader, but also what you'll get to hear from Jeremy in future episodes. What, multiplication is taking off. He's seeing so much happen that's good at church, but that's for a different episode on a different day. For today, we are done. Those are our 4 big lessons around multiplication over the last 17 years. And so now next week, join us. We are starting back up the podcast as we look at Toolkit 2.0. All of that really is our movement ready church process. And so if you want to grab the book, would love for you to grab the book. You can pre-order it now. And also you can see the free resources that we are including in every one of our podcast episodes. You can click the link. That's going to have discussion guides. It's going to have things like assessments. It's going to have transcripts of this. It's going to help you actually put it into practice what you're hearing. So download the leader notes. And if you haven't already, subscribe. And if there's another church or another pastor that you want to share with, man, it would mean the world to us. We can't wait to see you next week as we get started.